All right, guys, we're back. Episode 5. Sorry for the long absence, but we're back. Today we're excited. We're talking about bows. We're not necessarily focusing on hunting with a bow, but instead just talking about bows. Ben recently got a new job working in an archery shop, and so he's kind of gotten to, get some insider information where he's, learning more about bows on.
I'm an expert now.
No, but he is spending a lot more time with the bows, and then so I think that will be a huge asset for us talking today. And then for me, I'm brand new into bows this year, so I'll kind of offer my insight, what I'm learning, things that are different, things that are hard, things that maybe I didn't expect getting into bows. So with that, let's just jump right into it.
Yeah. Again, sorry for that long absence. It's been a wild ride the last couple weeks. As you can tell, we're in a new space. This is Thomas's garage. I don't know if we'll stay here. We might do some episodes here. I bought a house too, and we're redoing the basement. So I think we're going to build a headquarters down there. Is kind of the plan right now.
A little north and south headquarters.
Yeah, that's right. It's been crazy. Like Thomas said, I started a new job at an archery shop, which has been cool. Yeah, it's been a learning experience because I don't know. I love the outdoors. I hunt a lot, and I've archery hunted, but it's only been for the last couple of years, so I would not say that I'm an expert. I have people call on the phone, and they'll ask me these questions that just go way over my head. I'm like, let me put you on hold. I'll put you in contact with somebody who knows a lot more than I do. But it's fun. I'm learning a lot, and I think that it's going to be good.
So with that, we. Like always with our episodes, we encourage our listeners to send us your questions, send us your feedback. You can hit us up through email, podcast@forgottenoutdoors.com. You can also find us on our website, fill out our questionnaire form. Website is forgottenoutdoors.com. And then, as always, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all the social media. So find us, hit us up. We love your questions, and we will do our best to answer those questions as we do these podcasts.
Yeah, and I know that you guys are dying to know, and thanks for asking, Tom, but my babies are doing good. I know that you all care about that.
Yes, Ben's twins, freak.
Yeah, well, let's move on. Let's actually talk about bows instead
of
just spin our wheels. So, Thomas, I guess we'll start off. I'm going to ask you, some questions.
Okay.
So I got a new bow, kind of one of the perks of my job. They hooked me up with the new Bowtech Revolt. And that thing is sweet. And so I've been trying to get Thomas into bow hunting for the last couple years. And he finally pulled the trigger because I sold him my old bow. So what's been your first initial reaction for shooting bows? Because we've been out shooting out in the field behind his place the last couple days. And so what's been your experience so far?
So I will say that my number one thing is I love that you can actually practice shooting right here, right in your backyard. That's not an option with guns. It's not really an option with rifles. You just can't do that. So the fact that I can walk out my back door, get in the field, and walk 20, 30 yards away from a target and start shooting is really cool. And one thing that I will say, just based on my experience the last couple of days, is I would say almost a necessity to have some kind of a backstop behind your target, because for me, day one, we went out into the field, we didn't have a backstop, and I already lost an arrow. So, and that's just inexperience. That's me learning what it feels like to hold the bow, and so then day 2, day 3, we've been shooting in front of a little dirt mound, and that saved 3 or 4 of my arrows. So I would say that initially, I would just say it's not as easy as it looks. Make sure that you have something in place to make sure your arrows aren't traveling somewhere that you don't want them to travel.
Yeah. And not just for the sake of losing an arrow, but for the sake of everyone's safety. You don't want to be shooting through the slats in a fence and nail some kid or something.
Yeah.
But I guess you bring up a good point, Tom, that it's not as easy as it looks. And that's just in general, I think, with shooting. Whether it's guns, handguns, rifles, archery, I don't think that it's some God-given gift that you're a great shot. I think some people have, abilities and they're more talented at shooting, and they can shoot better and more accurately than other people can. I do think that's a real thing.
And I think with bows, your muscles, your strength, has a lot to do with that. Like,
Yeah.
I will say that's one thing Ben said. He was like, hey, just so you know, like you're using totally new muscles. So it doesn't matter if you can, it doesn't matter if you can go and curl a 60-pound dumbbell. It doesn't mean you're going to be able to pull back a 60-pound bow properly and making it, feel natural and look natural.
Right, yeah, you're using totally different muscles than
Yeah.
you do at the gym, with the curls and bench press. And so, if this is something that you're wanting to get into, shooting rifles, handguns, bows, that's what we're talking about today. Don't get discouraged early on when you're throwing arrows everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean that's normal. It's a normal thing. You're not just gonna pick up a bow and have like these super steady hands. Oh, I can shoot a rifle okay, and be shooting the back of your other arrows, Robin Hooding them. It's not going to happen. It's a sport that takes a lot of practice, which is awesome because you can do it in your backyard.
Yeah, and the practice part, I mean, there's a certain level of fatigue that comes with that.
Yeah.
Like your muscles are working pretty hard to hold back that bow, pull back that bow. I guess just for clarification purposes, we are specifically talking about compound bows.
Yeah.
That's what we shoot. So, we don't have a ton of experience with, long bows or recurve bows. So if anybody is listening to this and they do have experience with that, we'd be curious to get your insight and, see if the information's accurate across all bows or if this is unique to compound bows.
Yeah, and I work with a guy who's really into the traditional bows. But yeah, we're not. I don't have much experience with those, and so we're shooting compound bows, and so when you hold them back, it's not quite as hard. There's a certain percentage of let off when you're pulling it back, and then those cams turn, and it's easier to hold back. But yeah, it does take that muscle memory and that practice to really be able to shoot more arrows and to not get those shakes, because we were shooting earlier before we did this podcast episode, and we'd flung 40 or so arrows, and our groups started to spread out a little bit because our arms are getting tired and we're getting a little bit shaky.
So with that, Ben, actually question on that. So if someone's brand new getting into a bow, what would be a recommended amount to shoot each time they go out?
Like number of arrows?
Yeah. Because you don't want to get shaky, and then I feel like when you're shaky, that's when you can maybe start messing up with your groups, and then you start to question if your sights are on or whatever.
Right.
So what would be a good standard if you're brand new?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's honestly like personal preference. I think everyone's going to be a little different. I don't think we can nail down like 12 arrows and then you should stop. What I usually do when I'm like, have been shooting regularly and I kind of have those muscles built up, I'll shoot probably 25 arrows like before work and then call it good because I'm not shaky. I do think that you should practice to the point where you do get shaky now and again, because I think that's when you get that muscle fatigue. It's like going to the gym. You want to hit that almost that failure point so that you can actually build those muscles. And so I think that it's good. But when you're shooting, you want to make sure that you're not second guessing yourself, like you said, and saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm shooting like this now. I need to change my sight." I wouldn't be changing your sight if the last 20 arrows have been on and all of a sudden you're shooting different. It's probably you.
Right.
You're probably getting tired. It's probably not the bow. So like, I think it was yesterday.
Yeah.
We were shooting, and so I have a new sight on that bow that I got, and it's a different kind of sight than I've ever shot before. And I don't know, they have their pros and cons. It's called a spot hog, and instead of a bunch of different pins like on your regular bow sight for different yardage markers, like you have a 20, a 30, a 40, 50, 60 yard pin, like the bow that I sold Thomas, this has 2 pins. And it adjusts, and you have a little tape on the side that says turn it to 24 yards, and you hold that one pin, you shoot 24 yards. Turn it to 56 yards, you're shooting 56 yards type of thing. It has its pros and cons, I think. And so I'm still trying it out. But we got to the point, and we were out at 60, and we're shooting. And before I put my final tape on and finalized it, I was like, yeah, let's shoot tomorrow, because we were getting shaky, and I didn't want to trust our groups at that point, because we'd put a bunch of arrows down range. And so we finished sighting that bow in today when we had fresh arms and we could trust that group.
So as far as hunting with a bow goes, what do you think is the most worthwhile investment to put on your bow? as far as an attachment.
Yeah,
because
accessories.
so here's the thing. So bows can be kind of expensive like that. I mean, it's just the reality of it. Diamond Pro, is it Diamond Pro Edge?
Yeah.
I would say that's like kind of your standard low end bow. And I mean, you're looking at $350 with that. So, they can be a little bit spendy. And so that's why I asked the question, because, there might be somebody who's looking to get a nice bow, but once you spend, $1,000 on a sweet bow, you don't have a whole lot of cash left over. So what would be worthwhile on spending money on?
Yeah. I would say a good sight is a big thing.
Okay.
Also a good release. So if you're not familiar with archery, that's the thing that hooks onto your wrist and that you hook onto your string, and it's like a little trigger. So you're not, those compound heavy bows, you're not pulling them back with your fingers. You have this thing hooked to your wrist that you hook it on to your string with, pull it back, and there's a little trigger. So I'd say that's a good thing. And in my experience with the bow that I just sold you, the biggest thing that helped me shoot better was an arrow rest. That's what's sitting on that's where your arrow sits on. It rests on your bow. When I started out, I just had this cheap, they call them a whisker biscuit. It's like all those little hair things that you see, and you just kind of slide it in and it rests. And those are all right, but they're going to wear out over time, and they're going to throw your arrow differently because those fletchings, the veins on your arrow, are going to hit those, and they're going to come out a little differently every time. And like I said, that wears down, and you start to see a difference. And then I went through a couple different styles of rest before I found the one that I like. It's these QAD, these drop away rests. It's a little Y that your arrow sits in, and when you release that string, it drops out of the way. That's what I really like. I put another one on this new bow that I had.
Yep. And Ben, so when I bought the bow from Ben, I kind of just said, hey man, like, I'm brand new, whatever you recommend, I'm buying. So you just tell me what to get. And that's what I did. So,
yeah.
So, I agree. I think that rest has been awesome that you put on that bow. And so
it makes a big difference. I don't know. I don't think that you have to go and spend thousands of dollars to kill an animal.
No.
Whether that's with a rifle, whether that's with a bow, I don't think money is the key factor.
For sure.
But I do think that the nicer gear that you get, the better your experience is going to be. Whether that is with a weapon, whether that's with the clothing that you're wearing, whether that's, the four-wheeler or the boots that you have on. I think that better gear can definitely enhance your experience, the quality of your experience, but I don't think it's a deal breaker.
Yeah.
So you were talking about these Diamond Edge Pros, these beginner bows, and you can kill an elk with those bows. They're not a child's bow. You can spend, $400 and get a setup that it's not the nicest bow out there. It's not, the quietest. It's not shooting the fastest and hardest, but you can still go and kill an animal out there.
And I think that's a really important point, because along with that, I think, so Ben's bow right now is set at 60-pound draw, correct? 60,
I think it's 65, yeah.
And, the one that I got from Ben is a 70-pound draw, and that's a lot of weight. Like it's actually can be a little bit straining, but there are bows out there that are set at 35 pounds that still kill animals. So like that's another thing to know, is that Ben's talking about like the financial investment, but also like if you're worried about not being strong enough to pull back a 65 pound bow, there's other bows. Like you don't have to be in any kind of specific physical condition to be able to pull back on these things.
Right. Yeah. Like the bow that I was shooting is heavier than the one that I am now, and I kind of miss it. That bow shoots flatter, even though the bow that I currently have is a nicer, more expensive bow, and it's easier to shoot. I don't think it has quite the punch, but you can still kill an animal with a lighter bow. You do have to check your state regulations, because there's minimum draw length or draw weight requirements. And I think it's 40 pounds here in Idaho.
Okay.
So I think you have to be able to pull back 40 pounds to hunt legally. Honestly, I think it becomes practice and shot placement.
Yeah.
I think
100%.
I think more than the bow that you have, I think you do what you can to get the gear that you can, and then you practice with it.
Because if you're comfortable shooting the Diamond Edge, I don't know why we keep referencing that, but if that's what you're comfortable with, if you put 100, 200 arrows through it and you're feeling good with it, then there's nothing wrong with that. you know? So I think that is important. It really comes down to practice and just time.
Yeah.
Regardless of which bow you're using or, what kind of gear you're using.
And rifles alike too. I think that the gear that you use, just become comfortable with it. Put in the time. It's an investment. It drives me crazy when I see people that just, they get a rifle and they put like 3 rounds through it and then they go and shoot an animal or try to shoot an animal. I don't know. I don't want to offend anybody, but I don't think that's the most ethical way to approach hunting. I think that you don't have to put thousands of rounds through or thousands of arrows down range to be confident, but I do think that you need to be confident, because when you're getting into a sport like hunting, I think that you should have respect for the animals that you're chasing, and I don't think that's very respectful when you have a very high risk of making a bad shot and injuring an animal. I mean, that is one of the worst things in the world. The worst feelings in the world is to know that you made a bad shot on an animal and that animal's going to go run off
and die in a couple days.
Yeah, and no one's gonna use its meat or anything. It was just a wasted life. I think that if you can do whatever you can to avoid a situation like that, you should be doing it.
Yeah.
You should practice with the gear that you have so that you are confident and say, all right, I know I can put that animal down. And I think that's a good thing too. A segue into like the yardage of like how far should you be out to shoot an animal. And that's a big thing with bow hunters, because you can't go very far. 60 yards, Thomas has learned, is a far shot for a bow. And you hear about guys that take those shots all the time. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't take a 60-yard shot. If it
comes to comfort level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're shooting dimes at 60 yards and you're out in the woods and the circumstance is right, take the shot.
Yeah.
But if that bull's walking, there's a little bit of a wind, and you're like, I'm pretty good at 60 yards, I wouldn't take that shot. That wind can catch that arrow and put it 2 feet to the right, and that's in the guts of that animal, and it's going to run for miles and go die a week later.
Yeah.
And that's not ethical, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think confidence is a huge something that I've experienced these last couple of days. So I did the equivalent of a scope bite with a bow. So what one was it? Like 2 weeks ago?
It was like the first arrow through that bow, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was my first time shooting. Not my first time ever shooting, but first time shooting the bow. And I pulled back, and that 70 pounds kind of took me by surprise, so I locked out my elbow. And when I shot, that bowstring just slapped my arm. And ended up bruising it, and it turned ugly, and it was horrible.
Disgusting, yeah.
And it kind of just looked like raw meat on my arm. But that's the thing is, like, after I did that, I was like, I really don't want to keep shooting. Like, I shot 3 or 4 more that day, but all of them were horrible shots because that confidence level was totally gone. So then this last week, I went out again for my first time since that happened. And I was like, you know what? Just to kind of help me feel more comfortable, I'm just going to wear a long sleeve shirt and just like put a little layer of protection. And now that I've shot it another 30, 40 times in these last couple of days, like, confidence is way better. And no, like what Ben's saying, I'm not confident to take a shot at 60 yards. But at this point, yeah, at 20, 30, 40 yards maybe, if conditions are right, I can pull on that. And I feel comfortable doing that now.
Yeah. And like I was saying earlier, I think it's just I'm not trying to say don't take a shot at 60 yards. That's not what I'm saying. Right. I'm saying be confident and know your abilities. Because, I've shot a lot, the past while. I'm not a great shot by any means, but I have practiced these last few years, and I can have a good grouping at 60 yards usually.
Yeah.
And be in the vitals of an animal at 60 yards. But I
have to be perfect condition.
I don't take 60-yard shots unless it's a perfect condition, because an animal can jump a string, so they hear that bow go off and they can flinch and move before that arrow gets to them.
Right.
That's a thing. Wind can do all sorts of crazy things. Angle of, the terrain can do all sorts of crazy things. So for me personally, that's knowing my limits and knowing what I'm capable of. I don't take 60-yard shots unless the conditions are perfect. 40 yards, no problem. Yeah. 50 yards, I'll most likely take that shot, but 60 yards, they have to be a windless day, bedded down kind of thing. Personally, for me, to take a 60-yard shot.
Yeah, and I just think it's cool. That's ultimately, I think that's the thing that gets me is like just the way that bows work, the functionality of the bow, practicing with the bow, it's different than a rifle completely.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited. It really just broadens your opportunities for what you can do. Obviously, with archery season, it's different than rifle season. So you extend your time that you get to be outside, and you get to be interacting with these animals and trying to, just be in their habitat. And I think that is what's drawing me more and more to it is the extended season.
Yeah.
Something that is important to note, though, that I'm still working on is there is an online archery course that you have to complete, kind of like hunter's education. It is kind of boring, I will just say it. And like some of the information, I'm like, okay, this seems useless, but overall, like it actually does give you some good information on just like the basics, like the safety of bows, what you should and shouldn't do. It seems really basic now, but for someone who's never hunted, like it talks about dry firing and what that can do. And dry firing is just where you release the strings without an arrow.
Yeah.
And ultimately you can like shatter your bow.
Most likely will just blow up your bow.
Yeah, it'll just blow up your bow and you run a risk of injuring yourself. So that's just something to know. If you're thinking about getting into it, you want to maybe pick up archery. You can't just go and buy your archery tag over the counter and expect to go hunt. You have to have that archery course completed, at least in Idaho. I don't know if that's every state, but in Idaho, there is a course that you have to complete for that.
Yeah. Know your regulations.
Yep,
we can't
for
say
sure.
it enough. Know your regulations. No, it'll be fun. Thomas, you've tagged along with me on archery hunts before, but I've never been the arrow bearer, the trigger man. So it'll be fun this season for you to have a bow in your hands and have the opportunity to go out and have a chance at killing something. It's a totally different game. I prefer it over rifle hunting. Not that I won't go out with a rifle and try to kill something.
Yeah.
But it is a different experience. It's a totally different mindset of how you're going to approach those animals, how you're going to get that close within 40 yards of a wild animal. And guys, 40 yards is close.
Honestly,
close.
It has amazed me with practicing with the target when we're standing there and we're like, okay, this is 20 yards. I'm like, how are you supposed to get this close to an elk? How are you supposed to get this close to a deer? Yeah. And I think that our plan is to spend an entire episode talking about hunting with a bow.
Yeah.
So we don't want to get too far into it, but it's just, it's crazy.
And it happens. It's doable.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, Ben's obviously killed some stuff with a bow. I have friends and other family members who kill with bows. So, it is possible. It's just practice and confidence.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fun. Our plan is I don't know. We put up some trail cameras recently up in some areas that I've hunted out before. I killed a bull up in this area last year with a bow at 35 yards, so it was a good shot there. It was pretty close. But yeah, we put some cameras up there and they just weren't really producing like we wanted to. We did an episode about trail cameras. I think I said that already. So we moved one of these cameras to a totally different location, which normally I feel like I'm way more prepared for a hunting season than we have been. Like, I can't believe that we're just getting our bows fine-tuned right now. We should have been doing that like months ago and just practice. But we're kind of like flying by the seat of our pants. And I usually would never like do a lat move all the way, move a camera, 50 miles away like a month before the season. But we did. It's just been crazy with kids and houses and jobs, whatever. It's besides the point. But we put these camera on this water hole that we're like, oh yeah, this is going to be awesome. If you watch our Instagram stories or Facebook stories, we talked about this water hole, this wallow, big mud wallow. For elk, that's what we're like. Yeah, these elk, when they're in the rut, they come into this mud hole and they'll just thrash around, get all dirty and muddy, and we thought this was going to be the ticket, and maybe it still will.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know. But every day since we've put that camera up there, we've got a picture of a bear. And usually it's a different bear.
Yes.
And we got a picture of the biggest bear that I've ever got on camera. And I've ran a bear bait last 5 years or something. I've probably got pictures of like over 100 bears, and this is the biggest bear.
And that's the thing. where we're at, there's a lot of grizzly bears.
Yeah.
And so
It might be a grizzly.
It may be a grizzly.
At night.
And that's the thing. That's what's kind of scary about where we're at, is because it's pretty new, and then getting a new bear almost every single day is like, so originally we were planning to elk hunt this.
Yeah.
But we're thinking that this is turning into a fall bear.
Yeah.
Fall bear hunt.
Yeah, the bear season opens up. So, yeah, I think that kind of what we're planning is we're going to try to go throw some arrows at some bears out of this water hole. And we're not even going to bait it. I don't think we need to bait it. I think that this water hole, this wallow, is being more successful than some of the baits that I've ran in the past.
It's crazy.
We have so many bears coming into this thing, so it's wild. So I think that, I think that opener, like early September, before the elk really get into the rut, I think that we go try to smoke some bears.
For sure. So like I said, we are going to do an entire episode on hunting with these bows.
We're kind of transitioning into it right now.
But that's the thing, is that this is good because send us your questions.
Yeah.
Because this is a great time to get questions about hunting with a bow, and then we can hopefully respond to them, answer them on that episode when we actually talk about it. I'm excited. Like we mentioned, this is my first year doing it. I'm really excited to get out and try it. So send me your questions. Send me your questions if you have like first time experience questions. I'm excited to share my experience. I'm sure that we'll be sharing it on Instagram, Facebook. Follow us on those platforms. We'll be kind of taking you on our journey this fall as we get close to elk season and as we maybe hunt some bears.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be awesome. And I'm excited with this job and everything to learn more about archery hunting in general, or just bows.
Right.
It's a world that you can get very, very anal about, that you can get really mixed up in the details of how many grains and spine and straightness tolerance of arrows and all sorts of stuff. It's really fun. It's interesting. And some of those guys that I work at the shop with, they don't hunt a ton. They're more focused. They do more like just shoots, competitions. There's archery clubs and people that go and they shoot targets, and they do different ranges, and they shoot these foam animals, and they have a great time doing that. And that's some people's hobby. They might not want to get into the hunting side of it, but they're still into the archery side of it. I mean, isn't it like an Olympic sport or something?
I feel horrible.
There are professional competitions. I do know that. I've seen them.
I don't know. Because if it is an Olympic sport, I haven't watched it.
No, I don't know.
But regardless, I think, we're probably going to start doing some more gear reviews on our YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And in those, we will probably talk about some of the things Ben's talked about with, the different type of arrow, different type of fletchings, different bows. So follow us on YouTube. And I think at this point, we're kind of wrapping up this episode. So, this is just kind of our chance to do a little shameless plug to go follow us on all of our platforms. Listen to our podcast where we love feedback. We've gotten some feedback. It's been awesome. Continue with that feedback.
Yeah. Thanks again, guys. We will be more consistent moving forward.
Yes.
I don't plan on having twins again anytime soon. If any kids, anytime soon. And I don't intend on moving anytime soon either. So our personal lives should calm down enough that we'll be able to pump out at least an episode a week and keep up with that content, especially going into this hunting season. Hopefully we'll have some good content for you guys, and we'll be able to talk about real-time experience. Like yesterday we had this experience instead of like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So we're really excited for that. And the feedback's been awesome, guys. Keep it up.
Yeah.
We are dedicated to helping improve your experience in the outdoors and help you guys build that confidence in the outdoors as we build our confidence
for sure
in the outdoors. But anyways, thanks again, guys, and we will catch you on the next episode.
We'll see ya.